guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a topic that I feel like is quite popular, especially amongst beginner photographers, and it's about how to get the color grade that you want in your images. This is a really difficult topic and a really difficult question to answer because a lot of people do have this question and a lot of people do struggle with color grading. I do want to shed a little bit of light on why this can be a little bit more difficult than just getting into Photoshop and creating a color grade, for example. I think that there is a little bit more behind this, and I think it's something that I have had to learn as I've gone along over the years with my own photography work as well, and it's not always something that you realize immediately. So there is a little bit more to creating a color grade that you want or that you'd like to achieve rather than just getting straight into Photoshop, as I just said. Sometimes it's not that easy, and there is a little bit more of a thought process that has to go into it beforehand. And this is what a lot of people don't tend to realize, and especially when you're first starting out with your photography. This is especially true when you're talking about portraits, and in particular when you are wanting to get the color grade that you want. How many times have you sat in Photoshop or Capture One or Lightroom feeling like you're ripping your hair out because you can't get that color grade that you wanted or that you had in mind? Sometimes it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit with the style of your photograph. It doesn't fit with certain elements, but you can't quite put your finger on why that is. So like I said, in today's video, we're going to cover some of that and talk about maybe why that is the case and why you're not potentially happy with the color grades you've created in the past. So the number one point I'm going to talk about now is actually also a very big tip, and it's to use a color grading reference. So if you have seen a color grade that you really love, whether it's an editorial, whether it's a commercial campaign for photography, today we're going to be mainly talking about portraiture, but also fashion and beauty, which is my area specifically. If you've seen a color grade that you've really loved in the past, like I said, in a campaign or editorial, save it to your computer or to your phone, wherever you need to, so you can use it as a reference or a guide in future if you ever want to try and recreate that color grade on your own work. Now, I'm not saying that it will be easy to recreate a color grade from a reference. It's usually not, and to be honest, it may not look exactly the same, which is okay, because it means that you're kind of taking elements out of an image that you like, but you're not recreating it step by step either. I think that's all part and parcel of you creating your own style with your work, and color grades are a really big part of that. So this is where you can use references for inspiration or use that to an advantage when you are color grading. I don't think it's something that a lot of people do, and I don't think it's something that really sits at the forefront of a lot of photographers' minds to use a reference, but I think it's something that really helps if you are struggling to get the color grade that you want. And point number 2 is actually going to be a tip as well, and it is that Pinterest is your friend. I'm about to show you what my Pinterest currently looks like, and it is full of inspiration boards and images. I've gone pretty crazy over the last few years on Pinterest. It's one of my favorite platforms for everything, but obviously for anything visual, anything photography wise, I will absolutely save references in there, whether that be for editorials, campaign shoots, for test shoots, it doesn't matter. I've got so many different references in there, but I will revisit those boards specifically for color grades as well. If I'm struggling to think of a color grade that I might want in an image, I will go there and look at references that I've already put into certain boards, and I will try and get some inspiration from that. And the third point that we're going to talk about today, and the main point that I really want to touch on, is the fact that you really need to consider the lighting in your photographs, the composition of your photographs, and what's actually in the photo. So whether it's skin tones that are primarily taking up a lot of the composition, or whether you're looking at an outdoor image, like an image that's been taken outdoors, whether there's other elements like trees or nature, or whether it's shot in a studio, you really have to think about all of these elements because it's going to affect how your color grade is on that image. And it's also going to affect how you look at reference images as well. If you're looking for that inspiration of a color grade, this is where it can get a bit tricky because looking at inspiration is great, as I mentioned, but when you're looking, say, at a reference image for a color grade that maybe has been taken in studio, and then you've got an image that's been taken outside and it's completely different composition wise. You might have a full body shot of a model that's standing off in the distance with a lot of outdoor elements around her, for example, nature, trees, flowers, whatever it is, and that image reference that you're using could be in studio and very much of a model's face mainly. This is where it can be really tricky to kind of transfer across that kind of color grade from that sort of image. It may work, it may not, and you can kind of experiment with this, but I think especially the lighting will come into consideration when you're looking at this too, and skin tones, because certain colors don't work as well with certain skin tones, and you sort of have to adapt the color grade for that. For example, for my skin tone, I'm quite pale, so some colors may not look very flattering in a color grade against my skin, and I think this is sometimes what I've noticed when I've tried to color grade my own work in the past, and I'm trying to figure out why a particular color grade doesn't look good on a photo that I've taken, and it could have been that fact that I'm not taking those things into consideration. And as I said, the lighting is another really important part. The lighting can really determine whether a color grade will look good or not. This is exactly why when I talk about presets and actions, they are wonderful, especially in the beginning, to experiment with in Photoshop or Lightroom, but they do have their limitations, and I think this is where they start to have their limitations, is that on different lighting, images with different lighting, they won't always look as good. And that really needs to be something that you do think about in the color grading process. Sometimes actions and presets just don't look good across the board on every image, and that's something that you're going to have to learn how to tweak. But as I said, consider your elements in the photograph. This is a really, really important point, and the one that I want to drive home the most in this video, because as I said, it's great to use references, but sometimes you kind of have to match up certain references to certain styles of photographs and the style of photograph that you're taking, so that when you do go to create a color grade in post-processing, it doesn't look strange or it's not matching up how you thought it would. It's really important to consider all these elements because they really do affect how a color grade is going to work overall. And then my last point that I'm going to talk a little bit about today is color theory. And it's not something that you need to know every single little bit of a detail about, unless you've sort of done an art degree at uni and you already know this stuff. It's not incredibly imperative that you do know every little bit of detail about art theory and color theory, but color theory is really interesting to look at when it comes to color grading because it does have its place there. It's a good thing to even read up just on things like complementary colors, and we can really break down how colors work next to each other, opposite colors that can look really contrasting, and how that might work in a color grade on an image. I think these are really important things to think about as well when you are doing color grading in Photoshop, because sometimes you just kind of get in there and you experiment, which is always great, and I always recommend doing this as well. But sometimes it's good to know the why behind why you're doing certain things in the experimenting process and why things look better and why things don't look as good as well. Okay guys, well I hope you really enjoyed this video on how to get the color grade that you want. I hope some of these tips have helped, and I hope that there's a little bit more of a thought process maybe that has been sparked from this video when it comes to color grading. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, make sure that you do, because I'll be posting a lot more videos in future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.